Welcome everyone to the 206th Knowledge Seekers Workshop for Thursday, January 11th, 2018. And once again, we'll be hearing from Mr. Keshe of the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute. And I understand today I have a little secret that maybe he will be telling us some secrets of longevity and about how to have a 1,000-year lifespan, perhaps. I hope I didn't blow it, Mr. Keshe, but perhaps you can enlighten us. I think you're
Good.
there, ready to begin.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Rick. Good morning to you wherever you listen to these public teachings. I hope we enlighten you to think more on your own, with your own strength of thoughts. We have inspired many people to do many things and in so many ways. That's all been the purpose of the messengers of the past, to inspire man to live a correct life and in a way to live independent of his any imagination, but with reality that he is in charge of his own destiny and he decides it. So, as Rick said, if you have listened to most of the teachings and understood part of it in a correct way, you should have already seen the secret that life has no limitation. 500 years, 1,000 years. Numbers are the number of the rotation of the earth around the sun. In the universe, we don't rotate around anything except the creator, the center of central cosmos, where everything rotates around it. Is the center of the attraction, is the center of life for the whole of the universe. Man has got to learn, and the sooner he learns that he is part of the creator, the sooner, as we tell, he is everlasting, so shall be the man. This is part of the process of maturing. It's very hard for us to think. They say, when they said Noah lived such a long time, his time, 50 years, was a long time. Diseases and everything else. If you lived into your 50s, you lived a long, long time. Some they say he lived 500 years. Still, multiply 500 by the number of days is meager time in the time of the universe. But we have learned that our soul leaves our physicality and become independent of the rotation of Earth around the sun. Our year in the universe is absolutely meaningless. If you say I'm 1,000 years old, they laugh. Because 1,000-year-old of what? How many times you're rotated? So, if you're a Sufi and rotate so many times, you add to your times. This is a Sufi life. You can keep on rotating. This is what we have to understand. That man's life, in essence, is the life of the Creator. Without it, just 1 second please. Yes. Hello. Yes. Yes. I'm on the meeting for next 3 hours. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Keshe.
Yes, okay. So if we look at our lives in so many ways, we understand in a simple way, our life is part of the Creator's life. As He everlasting, so shall we be, us. But we got to learn, if the Creator has manifested Himself in different shapes and forms of the time, as what we call universes, as galaxies, as stars, planets, man, the animals on this planet. So we have the same capability to be part of it and be, in a way, understand it. It's important for all of us to understand something very, very important, and that is, we decide the lifespan of us. Does not matter where and when. Once the sealing of soul takes shapes in the womb of the mother of the man on this planet, it has captured the essence of the creation. And now it has its own dimension. It absorbs and it gives and it takes. When our soul leaves our body in dimension of the universal, what you call cosmos, then as we feed ourselves, as we shown in the plasma or in the magnets, it decides where it's going to be. It can come across, and most of the souls of the man who live this life in the space after departing from this physical body, or what are called the leech of physicality, then they decide what strength fields they take and they give. And if you come into a very high strength field, which is in the strength of the soul of the man, you get elevated, you can receive more, because then they want to raise you to a new level. So we see the what we call the rise of the manifestation of the soul in a different level. These are the things we have to open our eyes to. So when we talk about 1,000 years, it's just numbers on our count, because we limited our lives to number of the rotation of our physicality around the sun. And sun is the small speck of dust in the whole of the creation. And imagine we are a speck of dust in comparison to the sun. So, but in essence we carry the essence of the creator. So when we speak about 1,000 years, 10,000 years, in the depth of the space, as we adjust ourselves into different dimensions, we become part of the totality of the bigger structure, and life of the man in space is everlasting. Once, until the time when the dimension and strength of the soul of the man becomes part of the bigger structure, with even that still lives within itself. This is the secret of the creation, and this is what most of the men, most of the creations in the universe die for. In a way, they want to be able to release the physicality to become part of non-dimensional entity that they can choose when to manifest themselves. Not many creation of God have managed to reach this. Not many races in the universe have managed to understand this. And those who understood have matured very rapidly. And this was a gift which was given to man, to mature rapidly. Because in the structure of the building of the soul of the man, there is such a capability, there is such a potential within the soul of the man. And it's unique in the way that it has unknowingly become part of the nursery of the creation of the unicause, in creating new dimensions of existence. The flexibility. As you all know, and it's very easy to understand, most of the solar systems support life in the dimensions which man cannot even imagine. But on the other hand, to them, they can't imagine a life is like human race in the universe. So we are a beauty of what to the others, amazement to the others, as the others are amazement to us. We amuse them as we get amused by seeing different things, different dimensions of life. But the beauty with it, with this planet, is the what I call cosmopolitan presence of the huge mixture of elements. This gives the soul of the man new dimension. If you look at the rotation of the most of planetary system on the vertical axis, they don't have such a combination of the mixtures of the materials as we have. This creation of the rotation of the axle of the earth in a few degrees, which creates the seasons, and with it, it creates a combination of new dimension and the strength of the gravitational field, has given the soul of the man and a strength which covers a huge spectrum across the universe. And don't forget, whatever we discovered, plutonium, uranium, and go whatever you go, these are the first few elements, but they are the fundamental cornerstone of the creation of the soul of the man. And in the universe, if you have such a spectrum of energy of the gravitational magnetic field, it means you can manifest yourself in many different dimensions. It's a cake which has many ingredients, and each one stands on its own. It's a bouquet of flowers which carries 100, 200 different elements in it, and put all the isotopes with it. Put all the dimension of different strength of the magnetic field. This gives the soul of the man in the dimension of the universe to be able to manifest itself in a huge spectrum of lives. Somebody's microphone is open, please. So, if you understand this, now you understand the beauty of the creation for man. Where and how we can manifest ourselves. In having and being able to carry such a huge spectrum of the fields in the soul of the man's gravitational magnetic field strength, it gives a man ability to survive. Is multitaskers of everything in different dimensions. And this is why the soul of the man is precious. Because then in the dimension of the universe, if you come in a position where it's only uranium mixture, you can manifest yourself because you carry the strength. And then you use the others elements in the strength of the magnetic field to add to it and manifest yourself in the dimension. If you come across a planet which is only carbon and manifestation of life in the carbon strength, man can manifest itself again. This is why there is so much emphasis on guiding the man. It's an accident of the creation, but in that process has brought a beautiful creation, which we call the soul of the man. You call it a Swiss knife, it can do everything. This is a Swiss knife of the soul of the universe. Man's soul, and so much contact has been with the man in the past and trying to educate the man, is not for the physicality of the man, is for creating the perfect soul of the man. Then the soul of the man in the universe become the messengers of peace, because it knows peace. Up to now has created many problems. So educating man to understand the beauty of his soul has been our responsibility. To appreciate this strength, to see the beauty in his creation. Not many creators, handmaids, are the same as human race. The spectrum of the strength which is built within the soul of the man is unique. In so many ways unique that you can become, the man can become, and those men who were men of peace and have joined the universal community are the peaceful ambassadors of the universe. But in that process, they're the teachers. In a way, they create this structure from the beginning which is peaceful. Because it's like you speak languages. I can leave you if you speak French in France and you communicate with the French. I put you in the English, you speak in English communities because you know multi-language, you can survive because you can carry on. You can go to China, you speak Chinese, you fit in. So is the soul of the man. It's the facets of the beauty. This is what the man has to understand. The life of the man is everlasting, as is the creation of his soul which is needed. But we need the physical body to be able to transport and transfer all these different strength from this planet into the soul of the man. That's what it comes, the sperm and egg, and then the creation of the physicality. That we adopt, we perfect the strength of the soul. And then in time when a man decides to leave or by accident leaves the physicality, the soul is already carrying the full understanding of the strength of the dimensions of the creation. So, is your body, is your soul 1,000 years old? Or are we nourishing a soul which will become the creator, communicator, and alive in different dimensions of the universe? This is what man has to understand, the beauty of his creation, not the torture which has been put in by those who abuse the physicality. The more we abuse the physicality, the more we deprive different strength to be developed in the soul of the man, that in the universe can exist in all dimensions. In a way, we take feathers off the wing of the bird, one by one, and this cannot be. This is the purpose of all these teachings. Many people, many those who call themselves theologists, many what we call the religious leaders, at this moment of time are baffled in how to handle the knowledge which is getting released so rapidly in one go. And the biggest, what I call, shock to them is that so many people understand it. There is no need for intermediaries. There is nobody to call the priest and translators and transcribers. The word spoken has understood and will be understood by more men. So this is where we are. This is why we said life of the man is 1,000 years, the life of the universe, not 1,000 years, the life of this planet. And that life is everlasting. Don't forget, in some of the writings in the past, these numbers have been hidden. If you look in transcribes and what you call manuscripts of the old times, the time, the essence of time was explained to man very easily. But then they covered it. They said every year is equal to 1,000 years. Every day is equal to 1 year. Trying to manifest different. This is the essence of the creation of our soul. Once the soul of the man is created and takes what we call flight in the realm of the soul of the universe, there is no time limit. As it's been said, if I tell you the beauty of the life in the dimension of the soul, every man on this planet will commit suicide from physicality. But at the same time, we forbid suicide, which means the body has not done its work to mature the soul of the man to be able to live within dimensions of the universe. This is why in most of the path of the beliefs and instructions, suicide has been forbidden, which means the soul has not gathered enough strength to be able to fit in all dimensions, has not reached the point of maturity. It's very much like what we call the children. When you have a child, can only take suckle milk from the breast of the mother. Then you introduce it to bread, meat. Then as it grows older, as it travels across different part of this planet, it gets to learn the taste, acquires the beauty of the Chinese food, the English food, the South American food, and he adds this like what we learn languages in the vocabulary of the science of the physicality. All these gives strength to the soul of the man. The more combination we add to it, the more we have in the dimension of the soul strength into the survival and being able to manifest ourselves in different dimensions in the universe. The soul of the man is sacrosanct and it has to take its own time. It's like when it reaches maturity, it knows when it's time to leave. But as we understand more, that we get educated more, we interact more, the dimension of the soul of the man meets more dimensions in need of physicality, that it adds more to its different strength. So it's now start adding to the time of its physicality. This is why at this moment of time we live, we used to live 30, 40 years and that was it. As the time of viruses and infections and killing and the wars reduced, man start living more secure. We found rice, we found wheat, we converted the grass to food and we became, stopped being nomads. And in so many ways, every step has added more to the strength of the soul of the man in this process. We need time to mature in the dimension of adding to our soul. In a way, when you don't do wrong, and in a way, when you last longer on this planet, you give more vocabularies, you add more languages to the strength of your soul, that you can manifest yourself in different dimensions, in different part of the universe. In the future, as is done by many men of today who have returned to Earth from deep space, they have learned this. You go back to the point of physicality, to charge up, to add more. It's just like you press a button, what do they say to you? They send you a message, update, upgrade. When you return back to the origin of life, where you came from, because you have the essence of the origin within you, you upgrade, you add more. And this is what the essence is. Many of the people of this planet will return back to this planet to upgrade. Because the people who stay here as natives are upgrading, are developing, are creating more and more. Not in a materialistic dimension, but in a way of absorbing more different fields. This is what I explained to somebody very recently. It's like going to Italy and you ask for a pizza. You go to India and you ask for a curry. You go to Mexico and you ask for Mexican food. But you go to England and you go to shops and then you ask for a pizza with an Indian curry with a Mexican taste, and they make it for you. Nowhere in the world is so more flexible in food than in UK. So is the soul of the man. You come back to see who's added, that you want to take more mixtures into your soul. If you are, if you understand this process, then the dimension of physicality becomes absorption of understanding more and more, in realizing what is needed. And then when you travel into the deep space, into the space of the universe and unicos, then you speak all the languages and you know all the tastes. To you, you already carry. Mono-material, mono-structure lives in universe are many. And then they can only manifest themselves in that dimension. But the soul of the man, due to his construction, actually to the construction of this planet, the way we have connected our physicality to copper, to zinc, to aluminum, to everything else, this has given our soul a mixture of combination of the strength in its arsenal of life in the universe. So, how long do you think you live? In the new science, it was said that by 2018, those who are born in this year 2018, a large majority, into a large percentage, up to 15 to 20%, are expected to live 200 years. Those who were born in 1990s were expected to pass 100, 120. Those born in 2018 are a large number expected to live 200 with the present knowledge. But now with adding the new knowledge of the technology of the plasma, the life of the man with the children who are born today will be 1,000 years minimum. Because we have learned even to overcome those diseases which overcome our life of physical dimension. In so many ways, from now on, when you are 1,000 years, you're just a youth. You have just learned all the tools of life. Then you have to exist in the full dimension of the universe. Look, we receive a letter, we receive communication from the man who thanks the plasma technology for what we call regression of the cancer, breast cancer of the wife. He's done it himself, nobody else. We've seen the new dimensions with our medical application. We've seen the return of that coma patient to walking, to be able to eat and feed. And then These are not miracles. These are understanding the science. These are understanding the true essence of creation. We've seen it with our dearest Naomi. We've seen where she is. And in her cycle, now this accident is over. She lived maybe 500 years, 1,000 years. Because now even the physical accidents can be remedied. In the new, what we call clinics of the Keshe Foundation, we will emphasize on many of these strengths. Not returning back of the dead, but knowing that the soul has a still connection with the physicality, that it can be regenerated. It can be brought back to bring the physicality into dimension. I've done this twice, and it's very easy. And it's so easy if we teach the physicians how to allow the soul to still be connected with physicality, that the physicality can now use the soul to repair itself. There should be in the coming time no one in coma more than few hours. As we teach more, as we learn more. In a way, we learn more that even the death can be negotiated in the dimension of physicality and soul of the man. Does the soul still wants to leave the physicality, or the physicality still wants to be attached to the soul? It's a marriage which has to be in perfect harmony, and it's got to be accepted by both, the separation from the physicality. This I have taught you a lot in the past few weeks. You can decide. So you can decide to change your physical dimension into the dimension of the soul, and then bring the soul within the physical dimension when you need. This is an art. This is understanding of the true method, true structure of their life in the universe. In so many ways, when I teach you, and I've said many times, we've seen this, we've been there. That's what we do. We transfer our souls in the physical dimension, and when there is a need, we interact, we live, and then we bring the soul back into physicality for it to be there. And then, like a chameleon, we turn inside out. We let the soul to take over the physicality, and we take a new dimension in the universe. Every man on this planet, with the essence of his creation, should be able to do this. It's a choice. It's a creator's given right, and nobody else. This is why we see how much man has let himself down and is allowed to be abused. And with that abuse has not allowed the soul of the man to educate the physicality of the man. That is where the balance of the equality has gone, and then it's been abused. If you look at the history of the man, look at the Persian Empire, look at the Greek Empire, look at the Roman Empire, look at the time of pharaohs, look at the Chinese cycle of understanding of their life. Man has progressed in these cycles where man has been just and correct and has been peaceful with itself. We've seen the dividends of the true man of peace. And now we see the true meaning of how they have added to the knowledge of the man through the time when they were peaceful. There's been a myth that when the pharaohs built all these buildings, there was slavery. That was the time when was more equality than any other time in the time of pharaohs. Where a leader and a soldier and a foot soldier all were looked after the same. So they worked the same, there was a harmony, there was nobody above to do. It was done with the pleasure of doing. We see the same process now in Keshe Foundation. Many people in the background, in the work, They work on the same ethos. They're there to see the change, because the change comes with a peace of mind, peace of mind. So, in the coming time, when you say you're from planet Earth, they don't ask how old you are. They ask you, what do you carry? I need this part of it. Have you managed to add so much to your soul that you can give from it that we can survive? It's very much what we call on this planet the blood type. Are you O, or are you AB, or are you A? You can only give to A and nobody else. But what about to be the blood which fits everyone? And that is the soul of the man. That is the soul of the man in the space. That wherever you come, you lay your head. It's your home. And you are there because of the knowledge you have gained, the strength to be part of the support and part of the life in that dimension. The soul of the man has many beauties and many assets, but the man has never found out. Now it's time to appreciate himself. Now is the time for him to understand the true essence of the creation and the reason, be it just by accident, for him to be precious in the universal community. That's why we spend so much effort trying to bring man to understand not to do wrong, because in the space that these wrongs can be dangerous for some. The true essence of life is not the physicality of the man, it's the soul of the man which can do so much in the depth of the universe, in different dimensions, in different, what we call unipocos. Different parts of this universe needs the soul of the man. No one has ever told man which universes they landed in. As we know, as we say in a man's world, lions with lions, birds with birds. In so many ways, the soul which we have created can fit in the dimension of the soul of another cosmos, another universe, which now we become the feeding line to that dimension. This is the beauty of it. This is in my teachings, in many, many ways. I have hidden this work, and I have spoken many times about it. We say, now that we understand the work of the plasma, we can make magnet for anything, as I said in all my teachings. Magnet for carbon, as we see in the CO2 box. Magnet for anything you like, for plastic, for metal, for wood. Because we create a dimension of the essence of that environment. So is with the soul of the man. In the soul of the man, we create a magnet that it can be attracted into any part of the universe where it can serve. Not only this universe, but in the universe. So, does man live 1,000 years? Meager number of rotations of a meager planet in a meager star, which is in a meager part of a solar system, in the galaxy which is totally lost in the whole structure of the universe and the rest of it. Or is this the nursery of the soul that with it helps every dimension in the whole universe? The answer is clear, it's the second, not the first. We are not born here to be physical, but there is so much pleasure in physicality because it allows you to elevate your soul to all dimensions. It's like if you just drink milk, you do not know and you do not understand the taste of juice. Doesn't matter what it is. As you add more, the more strength you get, the more you can interact, the more we can enhance our body. There has been a path which man has not understood, but in time we'll understand. You call it viruses, and in my teachings I've explained what the viruses are. These are field strength which add themselves to the amino acid. And that's why man has not found any solution for viruses except in the dimension of the new technology with the plasma, where we actually interact with the virus, which is the energy package, which the plasma is. This interaction of the viruses with the amino acid is part of the new connections, trying to find solutions for the interaction of the physicality with the soul of the man. Part of these viruses, what you call energy packages, we call, is created by the soul itself, because it needs it for the body to be able to understand the new evolution in the depth of the universe. You think you just live in this planet and that's it. But you have to understand a simple word. Your soul is interacting and working with the rest of the universal community. So slowly and gradually is trying to educate its physicality that there is a need for dimension of the field strength, which has nothing to do with the amino acid. Maybe for the first time you understand why some viruses kill some and some viruses, the same virus does not touch others. Because the soul has already has planned in the process of physicality to receive these kind of energies. Man has to understand more about his own physical life. And the energies which come from the universe and energies which come from the soul of the man, in a way trying to train his physicality to stand more of what is to come, which is the interaction with the field of the universe, is in a way what we call evolution of the soul in the dimension of physicality. We have to learn this, because in the space is the strength which is absorbed by our soul, which determines our physicality. Now you understand when I say we open the true science of universe to man in 2018. You have to learn more. You have to understand. When you understand, you don't forget, you inscribe it in the dimension of the soul. When you learn it, it's a physical entity. You lose it with physicality. Comprehend and you survive. Remember and you always forget. Memory is in the dimension of physicality of the life of man. Comprehension and with it bringing position is part of the soul of the man. This is what we have to achieve, understand. And if you are so busy to learn about the life of the universe, no man has time for warring and fighting on this physical dimension. What a waste of time. What an absolute waste of time. We see wars, we see aggression. Why? Those who don't have want to have, because they are not sure of the future. But once they get habit of getting it by misconduct, it will become their nature. As I said many times, you look at the United Kingdom, it cannot produce enough potatoes to feed its own nation. And if you look at the structure of your own family, if you're a father, if you're a mother, you look always what is the next food on the table, that the children do not go hungry. If you're a doctor, if you're a scientist, or if you work, you go to work to get something that instead for what you put as effort of time, you get what we call money that you can buy, that you can feed your family. When you don't work and there is no structure to support you, what do? Begging, thieving, robbing, killing, just to have something to eat and your children do. Becoming part of organizations and a structure that the killing and destruction is part of it, because it guarantees You can put food on the table that your children and yourself can survive. So has been the structure of United Kingdom. I've said many times, and I've annoyed many British politicians and very lords and mass, what you call sirs, with my talk this way. Over the years I lived in England, always said, this island cannot produce even potato. That's why you become colonists. That's why you became invaders. To guarantee that you can feed like your father, their family. That there is no guarantees for it. That you will have food tomorrow, and if there is no food on the table, the children will rebel and you have no position to be. And we've seen this with every trick in the structure of the British structure for centuries. Why do they invade? Why do they go to different countries and now they call it Commonwealth? Because they need to feed, and this guarantees them the life. So once we make one nation, and UK is part of the structure of this one nation, we don't need to let them to come and rob. We provide them with what they need. The ethos of the thinking and the work has to change. Then the same what we receive from the intelligence of the food, of understanding, the man in England will come up with the systems that we can work better, that in conjunction with what we better we add to, then it becomes one family. There is no time more for peace than now. There is no better time for it. Because in a way, the more the population of United Kingdom increases, the more need is there to guarantee that the king stays in position, that he can have a kingdom. And with it comes more war. Because there is not enough intelligence in the monarchy structure to go out and say, we don't have the food, but we can create the technologies that it can help you to live better life if you feed us. Then we don't see what we saw as the German supermarket shop last week. When you have that, we heard what our people said. One said it's the war, one is the famine. And we didn't see anyone running through the supermarket. Because if there is a famine, they know the rest of the world is there to support us. There is food to come. There is everything available. This has been part of the structure of building military and arms to guarantee food. To guarantee not only food, has been the essence of the man that will get women, that we can guarantee more in a sexual behavior, that we guarantee our race. If you look down the history line, what has man done? Hardly many leaders have ever killed all the women of one village. They always kill the man. Exactly what the animals do. When the lion takes over herd of lionesses, kills all the babies of the past line. So has done the man. Man has not evolved, has it? How many times we read in the history that the world leader has killed all the men, and how many times we have heard that they killed all the women? I think there is none of the second. And it's been the habit which has been brought in by the misconduct of Moses. We all know how he came in a basket. All the male creatures to be slaughtered, that there will be no one except the king that stays on his own. He was brought up, and read in the history of Moses. He killed many times all the males of the villages. Even the dog and the pigeons were left alone. And come down the history 2000 years. Hitler, of a Jewish descent, did the same thing. Those of you who are from Netherlands, you've had a couple of villages like this, that he ordered all the male species to be killed. So the wrongdoing subjects. We see the same process in other parts, in different religions and sects and everything else. Because man has not understood, it's the soul of the man is precious, not the physicality of the man. If you live in Africa and you've been robbed by British for centuries, you should have never fought. You should have said, we give you what you need, you don't need to kill. They had nothing to fight with. They had nothing because they had the guarantee of supplies. It's the same with the French. Many of you know that the French government is tainted with blood, even today. In a French structure, if you are a true Frenchman, look where your money comes from. British made Commonwealth, but they left the freedom to them, but at the same time the control to take money back in from their nations, what they called the slaved. The French today in their central budget still receive slavery from every French colony. One of the reasons that French colonies are not growing and they're all in suffering and absolute poverty is because up to 80% of their income is sent to France for them to live a good life and Africans to be kept as a slave or any other place they be. One of the major work of the Earth Council is abolishment of this from the French structure. Why should a nation after 200 years still pay billions of dollars to the French government for what they were slaved and then they call them their freedom? Look at the French national income, look at the French colonies and see how much money flows as the French central bank. And then they go and they say the black this and that because they don't understand without them they don't have the bread to eat. The beautiful streets of Europe is paved so beautifully by the burden of robbing the rest of the planet. And this will change. We make sure of that because we elevate the soul of those who are what they call themselves European to understand their misconduct. And there is two choices. You judge yourself and nobody else. Now you see every part of the teaching is coming together and it's needed to come together that in time prepares man to be at peace with himself and then to be at peace with his neighbor and then to be at peace with his planet. And this is the purpose of these teachings. When you know you can absorb anything you need using your soul to feed your physicality, is there a need to rob another nation? Is it the need to slave another person? When in fact by slaving another person, now you have enslaved your physicality to your soul. Man needs to teach and man needs to learn a lot. In the coming time we will see conflicts, huge conflicts within the structure of the European continent. I have warned this recently and you will see it. Because the other nations will not yield to be subordinate and the other nations will not allow the Europeans to make arms to kill each other in other planet with their guns. Man of peace will not allow this. So Europeans need to learn there is no more time for gun manufacturing. And then they become equal. They don't see themselves because of the color of the skin and the murders they've done to be superior than others. When the Europeans at this time learn they're equal to the others and they have to be part of the same society, they are not any higher than the others, then we start the first steps towards world peace. Then many of them will become the messenger of peace. This is the time for it and the evolution of it has come. The start of the game comes very soon with the abolishment of the kingship in the kingdom of Belgium. You will understand very soon. There was a reason we were banished into Belgium. There was a reason all this had to be done. It's part of the life which I've accepted. But through it, we'll show the mistakes of the past. And by one kingship going, the rest will follow in the winter of what I call end of kingship. Because through my life, the others understand how wrong is and how much abuse has been. And then the rest of the humanity very rapidly will grow into it. We will see the end of the kingship through understanding that nobody is king to no one. And then those who call themselves king and abuse have to stand their own terms. I've said many times, if I go and take revenge on killing and doing all sorts of the technology we have, the Belgians, I make the mistakes of Moses. And that shall never be done. Not in my time, not under my watch. We mature them, that they punish themselves by understanding how much they've done wrong to themselves and others. And then through it, we reach the maturity of the peace. We have to understand the time has come for the religions to collectively fight each other or to find a path of peace. When the Jews kill the Christians and the Muslims burn the mosques and the synagogues, and then what you call the churches, then they come, it's a financial damage we cannot take. Then we find a solution. There are two choices for the religious leaders: to fight it out or peace it out. And they'll go through the peace because they have collected so much that the greed of the wealth will push them into that limit. As part of the prediction of time, it has been said, there shall be no place on this planet that a single man will like to make one single arrow to harm the other, not even another animal, let the man. And that only comes when the man is guaranteed his hunger not to be there, his shelter to be there, and the wealth that he can have, and the pleasure of time to do what he likes to serve others. And the time is coming, we're approaching that time. You got to understand, as I said many, many times, they have left me too long, too free to write too much, to publish too much, and teach too much. Once this, what I call blockage of the Fox News goes off the Keshe Foundation, and these teachings become so available peacefully across the planet and promoted by those, you will find 99% of the human race will become peaceful in no time. Because they've been waiting for these messages and education for centuries. And then who do they blame? Those who control these media controls. And then we'll see the end of what we call financial empires. The process is set, nothing can do anything with it. As I said, and I repeat many times, as we've seen the new factories, the new research centers of the Keshe Foundations come into operation, up to now, the wealth of the nations and others has been by gold. Now the tricky job of bitcoins, but the Keshe Foundation stands on the strength of the knowledge. The only nation, as one nation, which guarantees its resources mapped by science and technology on the basis of peace. In a very short time, your children will say, my father, my grandfather was one of the first group who joined the foundation work. To them, will be proud. And this is where we are going, and this is the path we have chosen. I don't need to teach you about the GANs and technology, but I still teach you because you have to know how to elevate and add more to your soul. Now you understand, when we go back to physicality and teaching of other things, is to teach you how to add more to the arsenals of the soul. In a way, the arsenal that I can survive in more dimensions in different part of the universe. I'm going camping and I'm taking for every weather. It might be snow, it might be sunshine, it might be raining. I'll carry everything with me. And this is the purpose of these teachings, that you carry enough, that you can manifest yourself across every position in the universe. And this is the beauty of it, because then you can contribute in what I call being part of the totality and not being isolated, because you don't carry that bandwidth of the strength, and everybody else have a part in physical dimension and I cannot be there because I'm just in dimension of soul. I don't carry it with me and I can't be in the party. I'm not there, not because I'm not invited, because I'm not dressed appropriate for the party. This is the craving of the man in the space. Why didn't I do more? To have more, to be able to be in party in every city or town. I have a friend, and that friend is part of the structure of my soul. Now you understand. Now we understand more and more. Why and what's the purpose of these teachings? In trying to add to the structure of the soul of the man in the dimension of physicality, many of us have taken into plants. We have eaten, we eat, we understand the process of the vegetation, we understand the process of what we call photosynthesis. Where and how does it happen? The same as what we explained in the past. Last week I explained about the structure of the passing of the energy through the lung, through the blood, and then the connections with the soul. There is a mystery or a misunderstanding in the world of the plants. Maybe today's teaching will start a new cycle of understanding. If you look in the history of the education of the man in the physical dimension life of the plants, we've been told that the plants give oxygen during the day and they absorb carbon at night. And then we have explained it again, like what we said: we breathe air and the oxygen goes through the lung and goes then through the wall of the lung into the blood. The fallacy, the most beautiful fallacy which we all have accepted because the lack of understanding. The same fallacy exists in what we call photosynthesis. If you look at what is photosynthesis, how do they explain, how do we explain in the world of science today? I've asked Rick to dig it out, that we understand the present knowledge and then we add to it that we understand it in a more correct way. With the new knowledge of the science of the plasma, new science of the creation of the fields of the universe. Rick, would you like to bring up the page about this photosynthesis, what it is and what he explains to us?
Sure, Mr. Keshe. This is the Wikipedia page that is always a good reference to get a baseline of what it's all about. We call it photosynthesis. And as it says here, let me just make sure my microphone's, yes. As it says here, photosynthesis is a process used by plants and other organisms to convert light energy into chemical energy that can later be released to fuel the organism's activities, or energy transformation. This chemical energy is stored in carbohydrate molecules, such as sugars, which are synthesized from carbon dioxide and water, hence the name photosynthesis from the Greek phos, light, and something, synthesis, putting together. In most cases, oxygen is also released as a waste product. Most plants, most algae, and cyanobacteria perform photosynthesis. Such organisms are called photoautotrophs. Photosynthesis is largely responsible for producing and maintaining the oxygen content of the Earth's atmosphere and supplies all of the organic compounds and most of the energy necessary for life on Earth. Shall I go on with this? Or I also have a video, Mr. Keshe, if you want me to play it, that shows in intricate detail the process within the leaf and so on that goes on.
Yes, go ahead. If you don't kick me out every time you put a video on, I get kicked out. I have to come back in.
Okay, well, let me give it a try here and see what happens. Just get it set up.
I stand by for being kicked out and come back in.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen there and see if we can get this to work properly.
Are we allowed to use this? We have no
Yeah,
problem with
this is, yeah, I should, let me go back first. This is a Community Commons video that's free to use from the website as I'm using it here for educational purposes especially, but it's free to use. So let me just get it started here. Oh, sorry. I need to share the sound. That's part of the, and optimize. There we go. Just redo that. I think that'll work better. Okay, I'll just start again here.
The process of photosynthesis produces ATP from ADP and PI by using the energy from light to excite electrons that are passed along an electron transport chain. Coupled with the transfer of electrons is the pumping of hydrogen ions and the splitting of water molecules. The following complexes are found in the photosynthesis electron transport chain: photosystem II, cytochrome B6F, photosystem I, ferredoxin NADP reductase, and the complex that makes ATP, ATP synthase. In addition to the complexes, 3 mobile carriers are also involved: plastoquinone QB, plastocyanin, and ferredoxin. Other key components include photons, chlorophyll molecules, protons, water, molecular oxygen, NADP, and the electrons to form NADPH, and ADP and PI, which combine to form ATP. Photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplasts of plants and algae. The process is also found in single-cell organisms, such as cyanobacteria, that do not have chloroplasts. Like its mitochondrial counterpart, the chloroplast electron transport chain consists of several protein complexes and mobile electron carriers. First, a photon of light hits a chlorophyll molecule surrounding the photosystem II complex. This creates resonance energy that is transferred through neighboring chlorophyll molecules. When this energy reaches the reaction center embedded in photosystem II, an electron is released. The reaction center chlorophyll contains electrons that can be transferred when excited. One photon is needed to excite each of the electrons in this chlorophyll. Once excited, 2 electrons are transferred to plastoquinone QB, the first mobile carrier. In addition to the 2 electrons, QB also picks up 2 protons from the stroma. The 2 electrons lost from photosystem 2 are replaced by the splitting of water molecules. Water splitting also releases hydrogen ions into the lumen. This contributes to a hydrogen ion gradient similar to the one created by mitochondrial electron transport. After 2 water molecules have been split, 1 molecule of molecular oxygen is created. Plastoquinone QB then transfers the 2 electrons to the cytochrome B6F complex. The 2 protons it picked up are released into the lumen. These transfers are coupled with the pumping of 2 more hydrogen ions into the lumen space by cytochrome B6F. The electrons are next transferred to plastocyanin, another mobile carrier. Next, the electrons are transferred from plastocyanin to the photosystem 1 complex. It is here that photons again energize each electron and propel their transfer to ferredoxin. Ferredoxin then transfers the electrons to the ferredoxin NADP reductase, also known as FNR. After 2 electrons are transferred to FNR, NADPH is made by adding the 2 electrons and a hydrogen ion to NADP. The gradient created by the electron transport chain is utilized by ATP synthase to create ATP from ADP and PI. This is similar to the way ATP is synthesized in the mitochondria. ATP, NADPH, and molecular oxygen are the final vital products of photosynthesis.
Okay, that's the end of that little video. That gives the technical end as far as some of the latest science goes on all of that. It's quite complex, of course, but it is what it is. I'm sure Mr. Keshe will have a different way of approaching it.
Now let's look at some facts. The way we looked at the facts of transfer of energy in the body of the man. The physical process has been understood and explained this way, but the real structure has not been understood. Now we understand how and why, because we have systems, we have technologies which we can do so. If you look and if you run dynamic systems, dynamic reactors, if you have a fairly large dynamic core, which is more or less, let's say 200 grams, half a kilo, and you put it on a motor, you fill it in with gases or you fill it up with gas plasmas, as we showed in the first part of the teachings 2 or 3 years ago, and you connect this to a power supply. Can I have a whiteboard, please? Anyone can give me a whiteboard?
Yeah, coming up here, Mr. Keshe. Just get this out of the way here.
Where am I? I've lost my whiteboard.
I'm just trying to. Are you providing a whiteboard, or do you want me to? I see your screen is coming up there, or Flint is.
Can you provide me with a whiteboard?
Flint's got a whiteboard going there now. I think that should work.
Okay, now I have to share. What does it say? This will Stop address. Continue. I want to share my whiteboard. Okay, now we're here. Let's look at something very interesting.
No, Mr. Keshe, we see your screen.
Yeah,
Can
that's
you
not
try again,
correct.
please?
Pardon?
We see
We
your
see your screen. Okay, there we go. There we go. Now we see the whiteboard. Thank you.
Yeah, it took time. There is nothing on this. We chose this laptop especially for this job. Nobody can interfere. It's only for Thursday's teaching. This is the beauty. We can work this way. So the hackers have got a lot of job hacking themselves. Okay, now let's look at something very interesting with this process. What I'm going to do is very simple. Choose the color. If those of you who remember, we worked in this in Sino, we have these reactors, gas reactors, which are run by a motor and then connected to a power supply, current and voltage. What is interesting is that for those of you who haven't done these experiments, it doesn't mean anything. For those who have, it brings out a lot of reality into the whole process of understanding of the plasma and what they call photosynthesis. If you take a 24-hour cycle, observing voltage and current, something very strange happens. If you go back into the presentation of Eindhoven, where I showed the ball with a lot of parachutes, I call it, and then we showed the fluctuation in the power, where during the night we produce more power than during the daytime. This should have cleared this to a lot of you, exactly what it is and how photosynthesis works. The photosynthesis comes through primarily and only through the operation of gravitational magnetic fields of the planet, and nothing to do with anything else. The rest of it is the process of conversion. Why does photosynthesis happen in the dark, at night, not the daytime? If you look at this voltage current, you see something very, very strange. If this is 0 to 12 hours lunchtime, and then you go back to 12 at night, and then you go back again to the lunchtime every 12 hours, something strange happens in your voltage current. The voltage stays the same in your power supply, but when it comes to night time, if this is the central line, your current dips to the maximum at PM, these are AMs, and then it picks back on. Very strange for a motor which carries the same weight, the same motor, the same current, should be a straight line like this one. This should be the voltage amperage use, because we haven't changed anything. We haven't changed any weight, we haven't changed anything else at all. But what we see drop in the amperage, starting from sunset to sunrise. Exactly what we showed in Eindhoven. In Eindhoven, we showed, and in the papers, and in the poll which I have made, that the power production increases by 2 or 3 times during the night and the daytime. Why? If you look at this, what I call graph A and graph B. Graph A, as a scientist, as a researcher, tells you something very strange is happening. Because by law of physics, the power used to run a motor is, where am I? Why have I got to this trap now? Okay, the power used, what we call watt, is ampere times voltage. The power on this line should be constant because we haven't changed any weight to increase pressure on it, or we haven't reduced anything to decrease it. The only thing which changes is the day and night, which is the pressure of the sun, gravitational magnetic field, and the pressure of the earth, gravitational magnetic field. How come the power reduces at night time? As the sun sets, we see the dip. I have asked one of the research centers to plot this out themselves, because this is important for them as they're in the space development, in understanding how you can lift from a planet. What's the reason that they cannot get their flight system sorted out? Because they have to understand this concept. So what happens? Why does the power during the night time reduces? It's the same motor, but uses less energy, which means there is less pressure on the motor. There is a less pressure that it needs current, which means the sun gravitational magnetic field is withdrawn, and the earth gravitational magnetic field, in the absence of the sun, it can push further up. And in pushing further up, it takes weight off the motor, it takes weight of the plasma inside. The mystery is not the system, the mystery is this, the gas inside. Because it's in a plasma condition, because it's in gravitational magnetic field strength, the earth gravitational magnetic field strength touches it, so it has less weight to put pressure on a motor. When you run a system the way I do, it's very significant, because the body stays the same. During the daytime, you go to 100 milliamp. And at the night time, you come down to 85, 87 milliamp. It's nearly 20% difference. So what we see for the first time scientifically, we show we created a plasma which is what I call, if I can change the color that you can see it better, we created a plasma in this blue section, which now it has an intermediary of the sun and an intermediary of the earth gravitational magnetic field. And it's only a few centimeters, maybe 20 centimeters off the ground level. And then you change this to a leaf of a plant, which is dynamic. Then take your knowledge a step further. You've done all this, we should be visited with this by now. The stronger oxygen, the weaker strength carbon, the intermediary nitrogen. Is the gravitational magnetic field of the planet, which dictates which one is taken by the intermediary, and then which one is available to be released according to the pressures, gravitational magnetic field pressures. Then this changes all this video we have seen, because in this video we just seen, released by the American education website, They hide something which they don't understand. But we understand. It says a proton comes and electrons are released, and then another electron comes on where are these electrons and protons? What are they affected by? Why do they get released? Why does the process goes during the night time? Because now when it's a plasma on its own, it affects with the magnetic gravitational field strength. Where do they come from that they get produced, and how come electron is released at a certain time of the pressure and a proton and the neutron comes from somewhere else? You see, the teaching is correct, but what is not understood in the packages of misunderstanding of the man is just added in. But if you put in now the further understanding in the knowledge that the gravitational field, the strength of the earth, 85, 87, less pressure, less magnetic gravitational field pressure. What does it do? It pushes the lighter weight, which is carbon, into the boundary of the nitrogen. During the day is the reversal. The pressure of the higher releases, pushes one down, and the other one is available. And then you have to understand something very, very interesting in the whole process. There is a word in this teaching which is added. It calls amino acid. The hydrogen. Now you see, the game is played by the amino acid. So, in fact, all the, what I call rubbish we heard, to a simple man like you, who understands now the creation of amino acid, and understanding that the whole atmosphere around the system is amino acid based. Now you see the interaction. This is your CO2 gas, isn't it? This is your box, but you call it a leaf. All that explanation, this, and the mysteries, to you who understand this, is solved. Through the interaction of gravitational field of the earth, you change the gravitational field, the strength within the center, which is nitrogen. Adding more of the gravitational magnetic field to the carbon with the nitrogen as a balance, it makes it available that in the process of the reversal, when there is more pressure of the time, which is the daylight, to be oxygen. Then if we understand this process exactly, then for the first time we understand even, for example, why do we have 3 lines, vegetation line in the mountain ranges? Is the gravitational field strength at a given point in the understanding of the new science that allows different strength fields to be created. At this point, no vegetation, we don't have the amino acid connections for vegetation to exist. We see a tree line. This now makes sense and fits to the rest of picture of photosynthesis, what they call photosynthesis, what we call plasma technology. The reality is that now we understand more of, and then the fallacies and all these pictures which are made become nonsense. Because it has been put in by words, because they cannot understand. There is nothing wrong with the present video we see, but now we understand the reality, we understand more of. We understand what this means, because this becomes important for us in deeper space, in creation and creation of the amino acids of the place of existence. What factors comes from the planet where we want to manifest ourselves, which part of the structure of the bandwidth of the elements we carry within our soul, that it needs to come into operation, that gives us physicality. Without the amino acid, there is no physicality on this planet. That's life. Then in even deep space, in different part of the space, are scientists who want to still be in the matter states to travel with what they call the spaceships. In understanding this, creating the two division sections of part of the fields allows them to create anything which is needed by the body of the man. This is the job of those who started this Monday in the new Keshe Foundation Research Centers for interaction of the fields of the matter of the body of the man. As you know, we have opened a new research centers and we developed it to become one of the largest research centers in the space technology for matter and food. It has actually started, and I thank all of you who've been there on Monday and you have set it up and started to work. But this teaching is important and it's targeted for you. Please understand it. This process is important. As I said, when I teach one, I teach everyone that totality understands. Now, if you have a doubt and you don't understand it, go back and make one of those original reactors. Even with your little reactors you put on the copper, what do you call it, this cooling system of the computers. And fill in with different and sit down and note the current flow is milliamps. And how it drops, nighttime, daytime. Then you haven't changed anything except the field of the sun which goes through the walls of the house, goes through everything, and the field of the earth which comes up through the ground level up. Then now this changes the whole structure, the whole fallacy of photosynthesis. There is part of this education which you need to understand, and it's important even for our space technology research labs to understand this. Can I have a whiteboard, please? Just take your photocopy of this, please, and give me a whiteboard, and then we can have this back again that we can work on it. Can I have a whiteboard in the background, please? There is a very important part with this work that we need to understand. And this goes back to original teachings, very original teachings which we did. And this original teaching was like this. You have, why can't I do my job? There. Okay. So what happens is this. Let me take this out. What is important to us is this. We said the amino acid, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, and hydrogen. Always put hydrogen on top. Start with the carbon, go to nitrogen, and then go to oxygen. If you look in the balance of the forces, field forces, you notice something very, very strange. Which this goes back to the picture which I drew just now. And then you understand the work of the gravity and magnetic field on the structure of the leaves and the plants, and what has become fallacy of photosynthesis. 12, 14, 16. 16 strongest tries to feed the carbon to bring it to its strength. Carbon 12 is getting fed by the nitrogen to be brought into balance. Same time, you have an oxygen of 16 trying to feed nitrogen to bring it up to its own energy balance. So you have created a dynamic flow. somebody's microphone is open. So this is how it becomes the base gravitational. But at the same time, you have opposite base gravitational too. In fact, if you look, you have 12, you have 14, you have 16. Two trying to feed, and the balance, what comes up, is very much, very little. Very little. Which this little, in the isotopes of the total carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, which we have a connection line, feeds the gravitational need of hydrogen. Which that, in turn, itself, as receiving of the equal strength of itself, it becomes the feeder, balancer to the others. And because this has a slightly more hydrogen, becomes the energy source. As we see, CH3, the sugar. Anything which has an energy base on this planet is connected to the presence of the hydrogen. Now you understand this process, then you understand how the effect of gravitational magnetic field of the planet and the sun dictates and changes everything as they retract or they push in. This is the photosynthesis. This is what we understand, and that's how it works. If you take the pressure out, and this is one of the reasons every one of us, we go to the shop and buy fertilizer, nitrogen. Because as long as we can keep this block or this guy in control, these guys will do the work according to the structure of the pressures of gravitational magnetic field of the planet. So for the first time we understand the operation and the need of nitrogen in the plants. Is the balancer of it. When it's not enough of it, the two cannot operate properly. Then the gravitational field of the planet cannot interact correctly for them to grow. Then, if you understood this, you understand why even the CO2 you add to your water of the plants changes them to grow more. Because you create the condition of the gravitational field of the planet, which is providing more field forces for the carbon balance to be in operation, that the nitrogen itself becomes irrelevant. And then the plant absorbs everything which balances all the amino acid pressures. So now, instead of relying on the growth only by nitrogen, which is the present time work of fertilizer, now every element of the carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen is there to feed, so the plant grows faster. Now you have three mothers feeding the same child, not one, and depending on the time and the place. This goes back, if you can create it at the same time at the plant, you understand, you create the environment of the plant, you're always in balance. More or less, if in the future research center, people who deal with the vegetation and life, they will measure, they will see a more balanced power. Not much difference between average during the day and night. This is the new and this is the correct way to understand the process. Then it changes the same for the fish in the sea, and it changes the same thing for the lion in the jungles. Because we learn to work through the essence of the creation, which is the amino acid itself, and in that process understanding, we need to bring all the factors and understand all the factors. It's very easy. The lady in the speech, in the teaching says, a proton comes and goes here and then there is electron. What is the game of the proton? What is the game of oxygen or the electron or a proton or whatever? These are all plasmas. Because they have not understood this process, then this plasma creates a pressure, a magnetic gravitational pressure. It gives it a new position, which that position creates a new direction where the oxygen is absorbed to, taken, or the carbon is rejected because of, and vice versa. Then we understand why has been a mystery for years. They've been telling us to not sleep under the tree at night because the carbon intake is very high. Because the gravitational magnetic field creates that a structure that you create in your CO2 box, which with the presence of the nitrogen creates the same gravitational magnetic field plus the gravitational field of the earth that calls in for energy of the carbon to be enforcing the condition on the nitrogen inside, which at that level there is no need, there is no strength for the oxygen to be as a field transfer available. Goes back again, no carbon ever crosses the boundary of the leaf. The pressure on the nitrogen through the gravitational magnetic field, which is in the leaf, creates a condition of transfer of energy of the carbon as a matter state through the plasma, through the leaf, and then the vice versa during the daytime. No carbon ever crosses the boundary of the leaf of a plant. The same as the lung of the man. The way we breathe and we explain the conversion of the energy through the lung to the blood, the same process happens in this place. Don't forget, you're looking by habit as the leaf. If this is the leaf, the same as what you've done with the mistake of physicality. If I draw this leaf in the three-dimensional, I'm not a very good drawer, and this is the environment within the leaf. Here, this environment is in gravitational magnetic field Gans state, is not in a matter state, even though you have the skin of the plants. The skin of the leaf is the skin of the body of the man holding the plasma of the Gans of the body of the element, which is the leaf content inside. This is why, if you understand even deeper that this is made of amino acid, Mr. Cohen, then we understand why plants have emotion, and if we can tune into the gravitational magnetic field of them, we can communicate with them. Because they are made of the same amino acid from the same environment that you and me and everything else is created out of. Now, the life and the science of the creation in the dimension of the what we call vertical people has different meaning if you understand this fully. Then In the planet Zeus, you decide you want to be the vertical, not to move and everything comes to you. You use the environmental gravitational pressure. Or you become the horizontal people and you move to collect more of different things and not one. You become the traveler on a jet plane in different directions from China to United States and then South America. Or you decide, I'm a local guy, I'm not moving from the village, but I take everything what comes in the village. Become what we call the vertical people. Now, with the science and understanding the true process, the photosynthesis goes through the window, doesn't it? Because in this environment which you have created, you have all the elements, the nitrogen, the carbon, the hydrogen, that you do not even need to absorb water from the ground, because in that process of photosynthesis, what you call it, in this process of what we call plasma interaction, you create the gravitational magnetic field of the water, the same as the lung. You produce your own moisture. This is important for governments like Chinese government to understand what is their worries in the, what is the desert moving towards Beijing. If they understand this, they can create a condition that vegetation can grow without any need for anything. And in a way, by rooting, stop the movement of the deserts at the boundaries of Beijing. But this needs a lot of understanding. But when you create this condition, you don't plant plants which are not suiting the gravitational magnetic fields of the environment, like as we saw the tree line in the mountain, but vegetation which fit into this environment will grow themselves. You have to work in harmony with the environment. If you force it, then you have to fight it. If you create a condition which uses the true gravitational magnetic field of any destination, be it the desert, be it the sea, be it on planet Zeus, you can live. You can create a condition that is what you need for the time you need it. The creation of the deserts on this planet is done because of the, what we call the angle of the planet. The planet starts from the north and rotates down, and it goes through that phase of desert and then coming down to the equator, and then the planets on the equators, they ball in and it turns over. If you go back to the history of, let's say, United Kingdom, it used to be some time ago part of a desert, and it used to be at the bottom of the sea in another time, through the angle of the rotation of the planet, which everything rotates. It takes billions of years, but they come up. The evidence of his is geologists. They can tell you very much exactly where you've been and what has been. It takes billions of years, but what is created in the North Pole gradually becomes part of the equator on the landmass. And this is, we cannot stop this process. But in so many ways, as it goes through it, you have to understand, then it shows why we cannot create, or we don't see as such vegetation in the desert area. Leave it to me, I make the deserts to be the oasis, green as what we call jungles of Amazon, because I understand why. But then this brings another problem for us. Where does then, if we do such a thing, will create a dynamic flow on the surface of the planet for the evolution and rotation of the magnetic field of the matters we call air? We need the hot and cold and the temperature difference to create this dynamic atmosphere that it guarantees life. And this planet has got used to it and it's adjusted itself in evolution. As it's happening slowly, it matches up itself. As I said before, without the dust from the deserts of Central Africa, there'll be no life, more or less, very limited life in the Atlantic Ocean. Because the dust from the desert, this red dust, becomes the beginning of the life when it lands in the ocean. Millions of tons of it. If we stop this, then what happens to the food which is needed as fish that so much man relies on? We become an integrated system. We cannot change it. One is depending on the other. But in places we can create small deviations, but not by what happened with the Israelis with Sinai Desert. Tarmac it, put a new soil on it, and put the orange trees, and when you cannot control it, the whole thing goes collapsing. Read about the Jaffa orange, how the Israelis created it in the Sinai Desert after the 6-day war when they took the Sinai Desert. They grew oranges on a desert land because they tarmacked it and they put new soil and then they put plants. But when you cannot sustain it, then it goes back. But you can create conditions to sustain life, like in the borders of the Beijing, in what they call the deserts, which is moving onto Beijing. Then if you understand this, you can do the same anywhere in the universe. But you have to understand which way the fields are moving. We look into the deep space and we see what we call the darkness. But in time when man becomes educated and creates new tools, we see the same thing. The magnetic fields flow in one direction and later on they flow in another direction. The same process as we have a day and night photosynthesis, as you call it, field flow, the same thing happens in the universe, but in a larger scale. In the dimensions, what we see, the pictures coming from NASA, the telescopes they have, and they see the magnetic fields, we see dimensions, environments, where the systems and the galaxies are totally rotating different direction in opposition to what is the rest of the area is doing. Why? One is the direction of flow, one is the interaction of the other universes at that point. There's a lot to learn, but we have to understand this basic of the interaction of the fields. This, if you look, the reactor we showed in between, that the amperage changes according to the time. It gives you a lot of knowledge in how you can create lift and motion from any space. For those who are in a space research lab, understand this. I asked you a couple of weeks ago, run such a test to understand. Because if you can create a gravitational magnetic field using the Earth gravitational magnetic field that it matches, you don't need to bend anything. The field of the Earth, like a wind, blows you into the air. But because you have a field strength within the reactors you have created, then you dictate the strength of that wing. You want to float or you want to blow and go as fast as you like. In the new science of space technology, you don't need to burn the fuel, because by adjusting the field strength you left, and you dictate how to and where to and how to blow in the winds of the environment. We've seen this clearly in what happened where Tom Sellers went. Maybe now for the first time you understand how come the rest of the area is flattened by hurricane, but not the house of the mother of Tom. Because the gravitational magnetic field created by the gases which has fed the plants and more or less the whole environment with, is not just the plant, they have created a condition that they do not follow. They do not interact with the field of the environment. The wind has no strength to blow through it because they're above it. It's what we call gravitational magnetic field shielding. The shielding comes when you have a strength higher than the environment. It's a bulletproof, even though some wind might go through. Now, the whole science with the experience of what we done makes sense. There is no mystery, as Tom was showing us in the Tuesday teachings of the, what they call the Earth Council and Universal Council, that he's done this and this is, that's why the mother's house is like an oasis. If you have the pictures, please can you put it up, uh, Rick, if you can find it, from Tom Sellers. Now, understanding this, even the photosynthesis becomes meaningless. It's field strength interaction, and we understand this more. This is total part of the structure of what I said. We bring the physical teaching of the matter state into the field, and then is in the soul. Because a plant has a soul, because it interacts, it's a dynamic, so he has a center line. Why can we cut a tree, part of it, cut its wings, cut its leaves, cut its branches, and still lives, and it gives more? It's a giver, because now it has directionalized its field. This is the beauty with the vertical people, because they have directionalized the stem of the tree, the trunk of the tree is the where I release my energy from whatever I accept collectively through my soul. This is why the trees have different shape and different structure. They decide from their soul, from inside, what environment I cover. I can go because of the field strength I receive all the way up, become a very tall tree, or I have a composition which allows me not more than 10 centimeter field effect, I become a herb, a shrub. I create a condition according to the central point, that at certain points I need energy points for myself, that I can at certain points balance with the environment. I call them the fruits. The picture we see today, if you join the Tuesday teaching, you see it. This is the house of Tom Seller's mother in the hurricanes which went through, flattened the whole of Caribbean this year. And nothing has happened to the garden. We have a video. Do you have access to the video of this, please?
Yes, just a minute, I can bring that up.
Yes, you got, this is the picture after the hurricane has gone over the island, and then 200 meters, if you have the picture of the other side of the 200 meters, beyond the boundary of the, what I call the heaven on the island, you see flattened trees, totally, within 100 meters, within a few yards from each other. Where the ganses, in a way, changing the environment has come in, has created this condition. It's not that everything just happened here. You see a circle where Tom, while he was in the island, in the last problem situation when they had a hurricane, he watered, planted the trees with CO2 and the ganses, and then he has created this. This is what was shown on the plasma video by Tom. And then you have pictures. If you have a picture of the hurricane area, within, beyond this circle you see, this is the oasis in the center of a disaster. And within few yards you see everything is flattened. Because now what I explained in the teaching today, it brings everything home. Now we understand why. Because we create a condition, that, you see, this is just, you see the hurricane line. That's it. At this line, everything has gone. And just come back in, you see life where the waters of the gas has been used. This is a huge live research for scientists, world scientists, and this is it. This is outside the boundary of just water. There is no walls, there is no domes, there is nothing. Now, does the photosynthesis exist the way we explained, or we have to learn a new science? Addition to the science, plus what we know up to now. Because as I said, if we say everything has been wrong up to now, we become hypocrites of the past. We can add this knowledge to what we know now to complete it. That's the difference in the desert of what's been created by the hurricane. Every leaf, every plant has created a condition. Even the physical structure of the building is protected as part of it. And this is few days after the hurricane, the whole island has been cleaned out. Keshe Foundation technology, plasma technology, is the only solution for mankind to overcome half of its problems. The other half is understanding of the totality and what we call the problems we have created for ourselves. We have to understand the true knowledge. We have to understand that gravitational field strength is not just, as we said with the hypocrisy, that it passes the life, but it passes the whole environment of a life. Can I ask you please, Rick, add this video at the end of the teaching of today. Tom's video, when we finish, just let it be there, because many world governments watch these teachings and then they can see the real effect of the problem they have and how simply it can be solved. This is a big teaching for governments in Africa and in Asia, and what we call the conditions which needs to be understood. Now, what I explained in regard to photosynthesis makes sense. That in creating new environmental condition, with the presence of the gases, we influence the environment. We decide where we don't interfere the gravitational field of the earth to interact with the plant's inner, what we call the gas state of the leaf of a branch or whatever, in respect to the sun's gravitational magnetic field pressures. Wouldn't we like to see this across all the islands of Caribbean? Let the hurricane come. If the government, like American government, decides to spray the islands with the CO2 gas, they'll have more effect than what they did with the orange agent in Vietnam. The beauty of the light of the gas is much better than the color, orange color of the poison they have left. It's still killing so many people. This is why we need one nation. This is why we need to become one nation. Then let the hurricane blow across Caribbean. Nobody cares. The building is still there. Because the field created by the plants through the CO2 has even protected, changed the environment, that the wind does not affect the building. As we see, most of the houses in the island are flattened. We still see the beautiful one sitting outside the beautiful house. This is what we have to understand. This is what has to be understood by world governments. There is a need for peace. There is a need for becoming one nation. Not killing scientists on a dining table, like poison me, poison the guy who made the stems, and all by one misguided bunch of people who do not even deserve to be part of humanity. The scientists who bring the changes has to be understood and supported, and not to be killed for them, for their knowledge to be put away. And it's all done under one name, by one nation, and this will be stopped in the coming time. When we said the scientists are getting killed by Belgium's, everybody laughed. He just thinks the guy took a poison, he had a brain hemorrhage. We've seen one after another. Now they become so bold that they kill the guy on the table. This will stop very soon, because the scientists are the messengers of the knowledge of physicality, as are the prophets of what became misguided soul of the man. And every single one of us is scientists, because it discovers something new, be it in our cooking, be it in our living, being on the machinery we work, every little bit we add to. So if one which gets known is got to be safeguarded, so is the rest of the man. We have to bring one nation, one planet, one race. That as a race of the man, now we understand more, we can bring the changes we're looking for. Show this video to your government. All the Caribbeans, take this video, Keshe Foundations, and say, this is in the island where it's happened. Let them go and see it. When we open a research center, we bring in governments to show, bring all the people of the governments, this is what it is, this is what's happened on the island, and it is not one tree, it's a garden of heaven. So why don't we do this across Caribbeans? Why don't we create the finances that we can spray the whole of Ireland? We don't change much. We don't need to bring reactors and get, oh, I've discovered a way to change, move hurricanes. You don't change. You create the environments, then what happened next year? What happened the year after? This process will stay with the island for years to come. We do pest control. This will create the condition of hurricane control, but leaving the rest of the what is needed through the hurricanes, through the change of the condition of life, but isolate places where it touches humanity. This is what I said, the fallacy about photosynthesis, because it doesn't exist. But because nobody understands, we can create any rubbish people believe. It's become a religion, misguiding people and letting them believe is the correct. But in a way, we didn't know anymore. We didn't know till 2 or 3 weeks ago how much Moses lied to us and he destroyed what he wanted to not to be known by us. Now we know the whole, what I call enlightenment. The same is with this. Understand photosynthesis, you call it. It's in fact is plasma synthesis. The plasma which interacts, now we understand the operation of the gans, we understand the operation of the internal leaves. If you look at the shape, at the color of a leaf on both sides is slightly different, because on this side, where you have the central line, it creates different fields which matches the carbon, and on the other side, it matches the oxygen. It absorbs and it releases according to the field strength. It's very much, as you all understand, you put a plate of copper and a plate of zinc. And then you brought a plate of iron in. Or you bring a plate of galvanized. Or you bring something else. You withdraw it, you still get CO2. You add to it a new nano coating, you get a different material. For those of you, especially in the factories, those of us who are setting up the manufacturing companies and the gas production systems, as we use 3 plates, you have to watch. Because if the field strength on one side of the plate towards the third plate is different than the other side, on one side you produce CO2, on one part you produce zinc oxide, or you might produce copper oxide. The system control in the Keshe Foundation manufacturing management team, this is something you have to watch. The electric current between the plates has to be, even though we use the same plate, otherwise you create huge amount of mixture of other things inside. This is part of the understanding. So one side of your plate is creating, for example, the condition for what we call photosynthesis of the carbon, while the other side is creating photosynthesis for the oxygen. One side of the plate is day operation, one side of the plate is night operation. In the control system management, when you're setting it up, make sure we understand this separation between the two sides of the plate. And if it cannot be controlled, it has to be two plates only. This is the beauty, how we use public teachings to teach our own scientists who work in different part of the sections, as you see in the space, the food and materials, the development of the factories and research development. Keshe Foundation has become a global structure and will influence the life of every man and living things on this planet, because we respect and we understand how to respect each other's physicality. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Keshe.
I would like to thank Tom Sellers for the beautiful job he's done, and I have put a request to speak to him that he becomes the head of Keshe Foundation Rescue worldwide, and I hope in time we'll see it, because what is done in the Caribbean is needed to be understood by all the things, and we should have the resources to support it to be done. We don't need to go and every time, every year to rescue and worry how we can feed them. We change the environment of the Caribbeans in these islands that no hurricane can touch. Let us see.
Okay, we've got Klaus had his hand up there. Klaus Dieter, did you want to speak? Hello.
Yes. Hello,
Hi.
hello to the
Hi.
Keshe. Hello. Hi. Yes, as Mr. Keshe know, I worked many years with the diamagnetic fields of the minerals, and especially different fields of humus molecules. And we see now a possibility to help the olive trees with this bacterium effect. Please, Mr. Keshe, contact me in the next days, and I want to discuss this with you. It's a very fine way with a form of liquid plasma, and I can show you this with the crystallization of the root structure of the water, how fine this works.
Can you explain more?
And all the trees are healthy.
Yes, you see there is a big problem, as you know, there is a big problem in south of Italy. Millions of trees are affected.
Yes, I know.
When we offered a solution to the Italian government authorities, they were not interested, because the money made out of seeing the olive trees destroyed for their private accounts is much more important than the salvation of the trees. There's a huge amount of money is given by EU to sort this problem out. The problem sits. We have worked with the highest people at this level, and they've been told not to touch because there's a lot of money is made. It's like the bridges in Italy which go nowhere, but the EU has paid for it. I think the work of the EU has to change. Has to be performance index payment, not we pay and we would like to see performance. This is one of the biggest faults in the European community. They budget, we give, and then you see how much you can take from it and rob the European community from. Then this is the guidelines, you deliver, we check, if it's there, we pay. And this is what it is, what you're trying to explain to us, we know for a long time. I have negotiated with the Italian authorities at the highest level regarding the problem with the olive trees in south of Italy. You just need to change the environment in a way you don't change much, but what do you call the pest or whatever is there changes and the trees grow very healthily, but it's not interested because the money, billions, has already been guaranteed by EU, and the money has already ended up in Swiss banks and on the bottom of the trees to change them to help them. There is no interest in EU to salvage anything unless the head of EU become clever to it and understand that's what it is. They've created a 10-kilometer gap inside of Italy for the trees as this disease is growing and going further, but it can be stopped with less than a few $1,000s in changing the environment. We are quite aware of this. I've done tests on it and it works. But if scientifically can be shown, they still won't be interested because the money's already ended up in Swiss banks and the private jets and the rest of it. There is a flaw in the structure of the EU, and that has to be corrected by EU leaders and nobody else. We know this, what you're trying to show me. I hope I'm correct. We know this for a long time, and we have offered how we can change. It's not just olive trees, you can do with any disease tree, anywhere in the world. And this is the beauty of it, because you don't change, you don't kill the animals. You create a condition where the pest is not suitable for them. They move to somewhere else if they can find somewhere else to move into. Is creating a condition that the life does not exist. But at the same time, it's a double-edged knife which we have to be very careful with. It cuts on both sides. With creating a new environment, do we invite new conditions, new pests, which could be more harmful or better for the plant? As I said, the life on this planet is a composite, and a very complicated composite. Every single cell in the body of the man is created under different condition, gravitational, magnetic field, and we have trillions of cells in our body. So there are trillions of different conditions we have to understand. It's not all, we can't say, oh, everything we do is 100% correct and this is that. We have to understand our action has consequences. And if that consequence is good for the tree, or are we just trying to enforce and blind others that they don't see the others, we just got rid of this, but have we created the condition that another life is invited to take nest in the tree? The more correct we are with our own, as I said, the more in the teachings and in part of the testaments, if we judge our own conduct correctly, we don't need anybody else to judge us. If we understand we have solutions, but these solutions cannot become problems for another creation and condition to create new creation, then we conduct ourselves correctly. The work of the foundation has to be 360 degrees considering everything. Not to become narrow-minded that we are glorifying ourselves and become like the other ones hypocrite. What do we create by changing? Okay, the tree can survive much better. But do we create problems for the neighbors in the next field? Or for the plant to become the center for a virus for a plant than just being a seed or whatever, or a worm? We have not understood that the plants get viruses too. And we have to understand the same as how we keep the growth of the plant. Is in the amino acid growth of the plant, the hydrogen moves up in elevating itself in the plasma field strength that creates a condition for the plant to grow vertically. Then, as we said, to go back to the teaching in the agriculture, every tip in the leaf of a mint has a strength magnetic field connection that it adds to itself. That's why herbs are different. They absorb more because of the total variation. Every single tip of a little nudge on the edge of a mint leaf creates its own specific condition to absorb from the earth. The collection of it makes a leaf of a mint. And then the collection of it in the what we call sp3 creates the smell of mint. When we use the CO2 to feed the mint, would the odor become stronger? Or would the strength of the meat now would be for good for certain disease? Because now it's not the mint anymore, it's elevated in a different strength, can match something else. We have to be open and understand and be correct. As I said, goes back to what we call the 12 commandments, now 24 commandments. Be correct and not to be self-centered to judge that's what I do is correct. Look at the overall balance field into whose benefit it is, and is the benefit correct for everyone in the totality. Do we make a decision to spray all the islands with different combination of gases that they can stand a hurricane, but would that create new conditions for citizens of the islands? Would they become calmer? Would they need to gather more because now they become part of the structure of the environment? They are fed, they are calm. I was talking to one of the Keshe Foundation management team yesterday, and he said very nice thing, which is very pleasant, very correct. He says, do you know why us white Europeans attack or create all these wars and go to different continents and do everything? It's because we, as white, as in Europe, we don't have enough food to guarantee. So we always worried about the next food. We don't have enough to guarantee the survival. So we invade other places. Where in Africa people are calm, they can go up the tree and get the thing and they're happy. They're always, they don't need to worry. It creates calmness inside them, which has a lot of truth into it. Goes back to what I said about United Kingdom. We have to see the consequences of this new technology, that it affects everyone the correct way and makes everybody happy the correct way. We know about this olive tree business. Giovanni can tell you, we have talked to the Italians 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago. Not interested because the money has come from EU and is already siphoned out. What I said to one Italian politician, the olive budget, olive tree saving budget of Italy is exactly the $4 billion payment of the Americans to the Bank of Russia during the Yeltsin time, arrived 9 o'clock in the morning to pay the miners, and at 12 o'clock appeared in Swiss bank accounts, and there was no 4 billion for the Russians to get fed. EU process of distribution of the wealth has to be performance index, not prepayment to rob. And then they would have grabbed the technology like us. If you show it to us, we can get the money. It's prepayment of bribery, I call it, and it has to stop. We see the same thing with American agriculture. If you lived in Italy, like the way we do now, you see many bridges which go nowhere, many streets which end up nowhere. Because the EU has prepaid, they started and they robbed, went into whatever accounts, and the bridges are hanging in the middle of nowhere.
Mr. Keshe, I have a question about that. Does that apply also for, say, a bomb-making factory? There's an incident that's come up that Italy is implicated specifically in the bombs that are falling in Yemen. And Yemen is one of the major catastrophes and with the people there.
We will deal with this. We will deal with this in the coming time in a very correct way. We will
I,
do this
I
very,
was
very.
thinking a bomb making factory should be an excellent opportunity to turn it into a Keshe technology factory and keep the people employed, but in a much different result in what they're doing. And
That's
perhaps they
beautiful.
will be forced into a position like that. I expect sometime this year, if not in the next month or two, that this is going to happen because I can't see this has come to life
This
in the world, and I can't see it being tolerated
you
by
got
the.
you got to understand a lot of politics behind these bombs which are manufactured in Italy, and the guns which are manufactured in Italy, and the Keshe Foundation is highly, heavily involved in seeing to the end of this. We don't disclose anymore what we do. As you know, we travel the length and breadth of this planet to make sure of it, and this is one of them. This
Well,
is what I said. We changed the
also,
gun factories into piano making.
well, that's exactly what I was going to say. You have a history of that in the sense you were involved with an actual factory that converted some of the wartime things into piano parts or made pianos and whatnot. So this could be a great opportunity in a way.
It is. These are what we see. People should not lose job, at least somewhere to go to spend their time to make something, by the positive way. The bomb making situation, which is used in Saudi Arabia, what do you call it? Subcontinents, I call it. It's all to do with the religious financing. All the bombs, all the bullets and the guns built and is used heavily into bombing the what they call Shia side of the Islam by the Sunni side is financed through Vatican. We are fully aware, we've seen the bank transfers, we are fully aware of it. Vatican is very annoyed with Keshe Foundation, the way we monitor the operation, we expose their work. There is something very, very interesting. Go back to something very interesting, the way we are affecting peace and peace process. Go back to before 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, when we exposed the operation in North Korea, that who was behind what and what was happening, and just look at the news in past 2 weeks. Suddenly, out of nowhere, North Korea has opened peace talks with South Korea. Out of nowhere. This is a camouflage. This is a plan for a bigger plan, but we still see it. And as I said before, we are very effective in the political scene through the correct conduct. If you would have said negotiations as we've seen in past 48 hours, 72 hours between North and South Korea, suddenly coming by a man who made the rockets to bomb them, is not out of strength, it's the exposure of the who's involved we did before Christmas in the teaching. They thought it was hidden, now it's not so. Now there is a new game in town trying to cover up, but still carry on underneath. We are heavily, heavily involved in opening structures to create peace, but with it we have to show who's behind what. And it's possible. You got to understand, as long as the Jewish world and the, what I call Catholic world, keep the Islamic nations at each other's throat, the more they can blame the others to collect more. I'll give you the statistics sometime in the future, how much each person is counted by Catholic Church is worth as a financial entity. It amazes you what it is. But yes, and these bombs, as you call it, made in Italy, are financed because this war in Middle East, the way we see it, is planned, and stupid people, because they receive money in their bank accounts in Switzerland, are following it. This is not a war between the Islamic world, between Shia and Sunnis. This is the use of Islam by Vatican and Jerusalem to create war between them, to sell more, and then create a new dimension of control. We'll see, we have seen it, and we are working very hard to elevate their souls, because if you punish them, then they start something else. By elevating them and controlling and the understanding, we can stop it. And this is what we are doing. And that's what I said, this is the job of the Universal Council and especially Earth Council to elevate the soul of these people. We are fully aware of the arm production in all the European nations. The problem with these things is once one makes one and one thinks he's ahead of, the other one has to make to be able at times to counterbalance. So it's double waste of energy in other nations trying to counterbalance what they made to destroy. 90% of the arm production now, electrical and advanced, is deterrence trying to have a better system. Than if you can do a better system to save, why do you need better system to kill? The time has come to be peaceful and the technology will bring it. And the nations who can bring this, we are talking to, we're working with. And they can. In the coming time, we will see this change will come through because they are getting fed up of creating arms. Creating to kill, but the thing is, we are creating to kill and then becoming obsolete because now they made the new things, we have to be better. So huge resources, especially for what we call rich nations, is going into a defense which does not need it to be defending something and then becomes obsolete because somebody is more clever. The intelligence of the man has to be used to the benefit of advancement of the man, not destruction of the man. That's the whole purpose of the Keshe Foundation. I enjoyed when I received a message on Monday, on Tuesday, that the new research center has started and they're already working. I've seen the pictures of it this morning. It's fantastic. It's bless the souls who are operating and working in that dimension. And then you will see more and more results in the time to come as a products in Keshe Foundation manufacturing side. These 3 new research centers for the foundation will be cornerstones of the future research centers for humanity. And they build up. We have budgeted for up to 1,000 scientists in 3 locations. Just for advancement of technology and conversion for the new factories, because to be able to run 500 factories, we need to create a new condition that it changes what we want, and it's there to be done. Any other question?
I think John Wells had a question here, and do you want to go ahead, John?
Yes, I've just come back, included in the panelists. Yes, Mr. Keshe, I would like to know if you must be up to what Victor Schauberger discovered, that when a tree is cut, the trunk of a tree is cut with a copper axe, it regrows. The copper helps it to regrow again. And when it's done with a steel axe, it will never grow again. That's why he built, or he made or put up a factory making the tools for gardening made out of copper.
There is an old say, as you know, I come from a farming background, and I remember I was told when I was young, if you want to end the life of a tree, hammer it with a copper nail. Depends what and how fast is the cutting. I looked at this some times ago because I remember how come the copper nail is, because if you want to end a tree, there are a lot of trees which needs to be preserved or whatever, and they found a way around it. Just nail, copper nail to them, and the copper oxide, as it in a way oxidizes, creates, become part of the gans of the tree, it changes its composition. But on the other side, the copper is part of the structure of the tree trunk in a way which doesn't mix with it. So the reason you do it with the iron and it just kills it is because it's exactly what you did in the trunk, in the box of the CO2. When you added galvanized sheet in, you start creating blood. The blood doesn't come because of the zinc alone. The composition of the zinc and other material covering the iron gives it the condition of CO2. When this iron exposes on its own, it leads to the creation of the blood. As long as it's CH3, It stays orangish color. When the metal exposed, it becomes blood color red at given spot. So when you cut it with a steel, you change the composition of the environment into the hemoglobin, which is not part of the photosynthesis of the tree. We have to understand the principle behind it. I've done a lot of research on this in the past. So the reason when you use a steel is because now we understand that trees are made of amino acid. You create a condition of the blood flow as a hemoglobin, and hemoglobin does not fit into the structure of the plant, and that's why it dies. You put blood on it, as I call it, where a copper is part of the structure of the plant. Even though there is some iron is within the structure of some plants anyway, but you increase the field amount of it. You have to remember, when you cut, understand the whole process. When you cut, you create a heat. It's the Chinese pan, if you remember how you create nanotechnology. You cut, you trim a tree with a steel cut edge. It's just on the edge and it dies, and you see how it changes the color at the end of the cut. But when you cut a stem, you create a heat condition, which now you have a nano cutting particles of the steel with an amino acid, and you create a hemoglobin condition which doesn't fit into the life of a plant, which is different. That's the reason. Understand the process. You are well educated to understand it. Now you can explain it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I carry the knowledge of universe. It's just to understand how to apply it the correct way. It doesn't matter where in the universe you are.
That comes to Krasmir's question in the chat. Mr. Keshe, how to open our soul or adjust it so it can accept and interact with the fields of the universe and teach our physicality to accept this process?
Our soul already have access to it. We have denied it to our emotion, to our physicality. As simple as that. We are always waiting for physical confirmation, but our soul is already connected to the universal community. Is how we can get our physicality, because we are so physical, to understand, to accept, and live within this domain. Don't think just because you put the soul around some cells, you have isolated to itself. And remember, part of the teaching I said, the soul of the man, or the brain of the man, through its absorption and, in a way, attraction and repulsion, absorbs energy from the universe, where the physicality body of the man needs the dimension of the inertia matter state of the planet. Our soul does not need to be fed, but it needs the tuning from the physical part of the soul that it can interact with it. It's a leech which carries in its found a compromise for it to exist. But at the same time, it needs to tune itself.
In that sense, Pete had a question earlier that he'd like to ask if there's time, and seems to be. Is the heart the 14? You were talking earlier about the 12, 14, and 16 for the carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. He asks, is the heart 14 and the two lungs 12 and 16, as they are different in size? So the flow is towards the smaller lung.
Heart is 16. Heart
And
carries a combination.
the
It
two
works
lungs,
on both
the
ways.
other, you mean? Sorry.
Yes. What happened? Yes. What happens, we need the, in a way, if you look at it in one way, yes, it's the nitrogen, but in reality, because it creates the totality of the field, and the balance side comes up from the two sides. If you look at there is a left lung and a right lung. The left lung is connected in one way to one part of the brain, which creates and affects the what we call the absorption part of the brain. That's why we are very emotional as part of the work of it. When you go onto the left side of the brain, we become, in a way, a giver. It's magnetical. Because if you look at it, you give with your right hand, which is connected to the left side of your brain. The same thing goes with the heart, the structure of the inside the heart and the lungs. The heart plays the two game as a nitrogen, but at the same time, because of the strength of it, it works at the high level of the oxygen. It has to be able to be a balancer and at the same time to play the condition of the balance as a nitrogen and oxygen to feed the surplus into the soul of the man. But if you look at it one way, yes, it is. But the other way is the oxygen, because it carries the total much higher strength levels, which can feed and create that dynamism.
Is part of that dependent on whether we're breathing in or breathing out?
Of course. Why do we feel good when we walk amongst vegetation and in the parks? We receive of a higher order, which is the oxygen aura. It is part of how, this is why we have different behavior if we live in different environments of the height away from the central core of the plant. Why people who live in the mountains have such a behavior and people who live in the valleys have different behavior. Because we are part of it. We just, when we talk about the photosynthesis, about the plants and the leaves, go back to past couple of weeks teachings, it does affect us the same as a human being. We are affected by these fields from the planet day and night. I explained that in the recent teachings. If you, why do we feel tired at night and we want to sleep, and why do we feel very exposed? Most of the accidents, according to the statistics by the police, happens in a given time in the early hours of morning, because it's exactly what we showed in the graphs. That's the time of the change from one to another. So now you have to change accordingly. So we are affected by this. Why do we feel tired at a certain given time? We were talking about the sleeping months in south of Italy, where people just fall asleep. This is all part of, it's not just when we are doing the photosynthesis with the plant, it's with us. We are a bigger gas container than a leaf.
Mr. Keshe, Delphas, what is the relationship of the soul of the physicality and the non-physical soul?
Soul of physicality is connected to one matter element, inertia connected, where our soul is a total collection of all the elements. One is central bank, one is the branches in each division. But they all send their surplus money back to the central bank to be kept, if you look at it that way. The biggest surprise will come for man when we go into space, that we realize we have more than we thought. And we thank the Earth for giving us so much that we can survive throughout the universe.
Question from Krasmir. Mr. Keshe, during our physical life, we invest time in developing skills and knowledge that might be useless in the life of the soul forward.
Says,
How to know what skill and knowledge to develop and what to use our time and development for?
first of all, skill is a knowledge gaining condition for the elevation of the soul of the man. And a farmer skill is for his physical matter state, and an engineer or an architect or a builder the same. It doesn't change anything in their soul. In a way, it elevates for them to understand more of what they are, but it's literally irrelevant, because in a way it adds to one part and not the other. But you have to remember something which is very essential, and I referred to it before in the teachings. We carry all the knowledge of the past from our ancestors in our RNA, or in the soul of the physicality. So we have the knowledge, so we carry the experience, but that is for our physical part. The emotion, as we said, there are no carpenters in the space and there are no steelmen and builders. What we gain from it, the joy, the happiness that we serve, we elevate, we create something that the others or our own physicality can live off in balance, then we see the difference. This is part of our misguided misunderstanding that we have to be a PhD or a doctor to have a higher soul. I promise you. A farmer in the middle of the jungle who sees no one but is chosen to live most probably has much higher soul than the man who's a professor and a PhD because he had to cheat it a lot. But the farmer in the middle of Amazons negotiates with trees and plants, understands them and live in harmony. Goes back to the question of Hitler or Mandela. Shall we call it a day?
Mr. Keshe, good morning.
I was wondering what happened to Azar. Good morning.
There's two things I want to ask. One, you said the other universal community, they're amazed by us. Why they're amazed by us? And second thing is, you said we're an accident, but we turned out to be a beautiful accident. What was that accident? And when?
Creation of the earth is the accident, the way it's turned up. And why we are the puzzle is that how come these people have everything and they don't see it? How much they're ignorant to their own creation. I think this answers both of you in one sentence.
And
why
the earth was an accident? Why?
It just created out of the accident, just coincidental, and it took a direction of the rotation. And that's what it is now. The way you see, there is a very interesting point I raised for some scientists and they cannot answer at the moment. And we look at the long term, but you at the moment human race look as a short term. I wonder if our annual time, we know in Iranian culture we celebrate the Nowruz at certain given time and second. Was this rotation of the earth around the sun, that 365 days and so many seconds, 10 million years ago? Or did it have more seconds to it? We don't have enough history to collect this data, to have this data, but there is a way you can do it. And it'll show that our annual time is reducing by so much every so many million years. Because the closer we come, get pulled in by the sun, the shorter the circumference to rotate. And then the other effect is that because of the interaction of the fields of this planet, would the 24 hours will be 24 hours, or we can tune it to 24 hours, or in a million, 2 million years, it will be 23 hours and 59 minutes. Then it throws everything out of the scale which we set things up for. This is what it is. So we are created in that it's accident because what it means, the conditions have created it. It wasn't pre-planned, and so it is what it is, and we have to accept it and live with it. As the dinosaurs don't exist because we are closer. You see, the existence of the dinosaurs and big trees and big plants goes back to before, billions of years ago, because of the same thing as I explained by the photosynthesis. The tree line is the indication of the height of the animals who can exist. And as the pressure from the gravitational magnetic field of the sun becomes greater, does not allow growth of the taller trees and animals. It's simple as that. Now we understand our position, our height, our intelligence, whatever is dependent on the interaction of the field of this planet and the sun. The sooner we understand this, the sooner we find new technology, new dimensions in life. I have to be in a meeting, so I think we passed. It's nearly 12 o'clock. We've been here 3 hours.
Right
I
on.
have
Thank
to
you,
attend the
Mr.
meeting.
Keshe. No problem.
Yeah. As I said, Keshe Foundation is developing very fast in different directions, and we have a lot of things which is happening around us for what we call the progress and development of the foundation in every aspect. Please just understand the teaching of today, because as I said, the teachings are becoming much more intense. The teachings are becoming very, very direct, because we have taught for so many long. In 2 weeks time is exactly 4 years that we started 208 teaching. It's 4 years we have started the teaching so openly and so consistently, non-stop, thanks to Rick and all the Keshe Foundation management in the background. We don't stop, we carry on teaching. And it's got to the point that the governments have started taking notice of the evolution and development, and hesitance comes because of the negative publicity, but the negative publicity has been very good for us. As you're aware, we are still in what I call the nursery of the knowledge of the universe, and to get into the first class we need a lot more to learn. And please listen to the teaching, especially since week, 2 weeks before Christmas, and now in past 5 or 6 teachings we've taken a new course, and in that course we are entering into space technology in a very rapid way. I thank our research team in that. They're doing a lot of good work. Some of it they don't see, but on the other hand I don't teach because it has to be understood by them. The new research center with the food and materials, and the other research centers which is working with the energy and others. And I thank you all. Try to comprehend the essence of the knowledge, not to become a copycat, and then we develop very rapidly. Thank you very much for today. Please show that video of the Tom Sellers at the end after you close, so people see to understand all of it as he explains.
Yes, I'm about to play that now. Thank you. I'll put the sound on so we hear him discussing it.
Thank you very much, and good day.
Thank you, Mr. Keshe, and we'll see you in the next workshop. Okay, that brings to a close the 206 Knowledge Seekers Workshop for Thursday, January 11th, 2018. And we'll end with the Tom Salas video here. Okay, I'll play that now.
So I'm trying to give you an idea of where the edges are to what we might be looking at for some kind of a protective dome for that the plasma has given us. So what I'm doing here is I've started in front of the house and I'm walking down the track, and you can see there's the flowers, everything's all right, a little bit tangly, but it's all right. Beautiful. Flowers, we got flowers, and there's the bottom of the track. can see there is a difference. Is it the plasma? We just don't know, but I suspect yes. For sure it's a different vibration. And I'll go and stand right in the center in front of the house. Say hi.
Hi.
And that's the way it looks right in front of the house. There's our beautiful mountains that were once green and then now brown. Right, here's the little shed that's intact. And kind of over the top there is my little house shack that got blown down. And kind of over there is the other shack that got blown down. So we feel that there was like a ring of, let's call it a ring of oasis around the house of a couple of 100 feet. And then there was an edge to that ring where things started to get a bit more vulnerable. We don't know if that's the case or not, but have a look for yourself. It's certainly a nicer vibe up here than it is down at the bottom of the truck. So here's the little bed that I was telling Carolina about. We've got pineapple, chardon bene, that's mulberry, that's moringa, what's that, Chinese cabbage, that's aubergine, spinach, one is. You've got basilic looking good, pineapple on the way, and somewhere in there look, you can see there's a jar of plasma. Perhaps that helped that bed to stay intact through the hurricane. We don't know for sure, but maybe.